by late elementary school, middle school, I definitely found that I had a knack for math. In hindsight, there's two narratives when you're good at something. One narrative is, oh, I'm just gifted somehow. I have the right DNA or something like that. Another narrative you tell yourself is, no, maybe I'm just approaching things the right way. And I strongly, I believe in a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I think actually what my advantage was, and I'm guessing a lot of y'all as well, is that I was the kid that when I was in a math class and a teacher showed us how to do something, I was always curious, like, why does that work? And, what are the edge cases here? So I would always like to play around with it a little bit. In middle school, I started to do some of these math competitions that some of y'all are familiar with probably, and I started to see that I had a knack for it. So I had a lot of confidence entering into ninth grade. I have to admit, I think depending on the teacher, I was usually either their favorite or their least favorite student, depending on, I think some teachers were they liked the students that pushed them, that liked to kind of think of the edge cases, that wanted to learn a little bit more independently, and some faculty weren't as into that type of thing. But ninth grade was when I was just really starting to really gain a lot of confidence. It was probably my sophomore, junior year that I became even more serious. That's when I started. I went to a pretty standard public school. I went to Grace King High School in Metairie, Louisiana. It was a pretty run-of-the-mill public high school in Louisiana. But it was in sophomore, junior year that I started, mainly through things like math competitions, meeting kids outside of my high school and even outside of my city or my state. And then I realized just, I can't coast. I have to work a little bit harder if I really want to, if I really want to thrive and do well in this. And so that's probably where I hit another gear. But for me, it was a combination. I'd be lying if I was saying I was completely intrinsically motivated. There was some extrinsic. I liked the ego boost from being able to do well in a course or do well in a competition. But I definitely also got very intrinsically motivated around that time, where you start to see the really interesting parts of math. You start to learn to do proofs. You start to realize that math is describing, in some ways, it's the deepest philosophy of describing the reality. It's stripped away of a lot of the human constructs that we tend to apply to things. So that was starting to happen around ninth grade.
That's so awesome. Thank you. I'm sort of similar with my teachers. A lot of them either like me or do not like me. But I do really enjoy math for both reasons. So thank you. Damien, you want to go?
Absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, Khan Academy has done so much in just making me realize the value of connecting different ideas across different subjects and the profound insight and even self-discovery that can emerge from making those connections and just the interconnectedness of knowledge as a whole. Do you have any particular thoughts on the future of interdisciplinary education? Could you tell us anything about how you might approach teaching interdisciplinarily in the classroom, be it in person or virtually?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating question. It's one that we've debated at Khan Academy over the years, because there's the system as it is, which, as you know, is not that interdisciplinary. I mean, it's mind-boggling that even things like calculus and physics are taught as two separate classes. Marvin, you might want to mute your thing. But even classes like physics that heavily use algebra and trigonometry and calculus, that is actually taught as a separate class. But as we know, in almost every domain, you can touch on math, you can touch on science, you can touch on philosophy, you can touch on history, you can touch on writing, and communication. These are all interlinked. So I kind of have a two-pronged philosophy here. One is, we want Khan Academy and whatever we produce to be immediately useful to students navigating the system as it is. And that's why if you go to Khan Academy's website, we are organized very much the way that your schools are probably organized or universities are organized. But then within that lens, a lot of times I'm just working through a worked example, the type that you might see. But one thing that, I try to reflect on what the secret sauces of Khan Academy are. And I think one of them is that I do the videos. When I do them, they're extemporaneous. I'm in many cases, it's the first time I'm seeing the problem. I don't plan out a script. And so you're getting pretty raw thoughts from me. As many of y'all watch the video, I talk exactly the way I'm talking right now. And I haven't planned a script right now either. I'm allowing myself to have fun with it. I'm allowing myself to ask questions. Sometimes if I prepare for a video, I will say, hey, this word entropy shows up in computer science. It shows up in chemistry. It shows up in physics. Is it the same thing? And in which case, how can I point that out to people? Can I point out to people just things that will blow their minds? It doesn't happen in every video, but in every 10th or 20th video, if you can give some people a little bit of sense of wonder or just a little joke or something, I think that helps connect dots in certain ways. Now, my second plan is, as Khan Academy becomes more and more significant, are there ways that we can create true interdisciplinary paths? Like if today I just created a course on Khan Academy that mixed history and chemistry and physics and math, not that many people who are interested might use it, but it's not going to be adopted like big time mainstream by a lot of folks. But some of y'all know I've started a Khan Lab School, which is an in-person physical school out here in California. We just launched a Khan World School, which is a school in conjunction with Arizona State University, which is an online high school, which is available to anyone anywhere. And so when we get to define the whole school, then we get to be more interdisciplinary. So for example, at Khan World School, the anchor point of the school is a daily seminar. These daily seminars, and we're working with a team at University of Chicago to write them all out. These are the things that we would always want to talk about. Is there intelligent life? What are the ethics of artificial intelligence? Should we be able to use CRISPR to alter the human genome? Every question I just said, and we could list 50 of those are multidisciplinary. What should we do if we come in contact with an intelligent life form? Or how will we know intelligence? If that affects, well, who are we as humans? The science of it. You can go deeper and deeper. The politics of it, the economics of it. All of these questions are multidisciplinary. So I would like to see more things like that. We're also at Khan Academy exploring the idea of Khan Academy mastery itself leading to credit, high school and college credit. We're already starting to do that in college algebra, but I hope to do that in other courses. So another dream is over the next 2-3 years, we can then construct more of these interdisciplinary courses. And then the last thing I'll say is we're actually exploring pathways where competency on Khan Academy doesn't just give you college credit, but it can lead to internships and apprenticeships. And once again, if we can define the pathways, then we can afford to rethink the traditional academic model. These traditional courses that we're all familiar with, and you take your sophomore year, junior. This was essentially invented by 10 university presidents in 1890, the Committee of 10. And we know the world has changed a lot since 1890, but we're still doing the exact same courses and give or take roughly the same scope. So yes, I do hope to change it once we have the leverage to do so.
This collaborative work is really fascinating. Now, I'd like to give a shout out to sorry, I might be pronouncing your name incorrectly, but he helped secure this AMA in the first place. So absolutely, we really should give him a hand for that. If you have a question, Ramesh, sorry if I'm again mispronouncing your name. If you do, you are more than welcome to go.
You pronounced my name correct. So, hi Sal, I'm Ramesh from India and a huge fan of you. You and Khan Academy has been my best companion throughout my high school time. But now I'm going to college and I feel like I won't have that companion in college. So I'm wondering if you have anything in mind or plan for college students. Also, I believe that the traditional college system is kind of old, unlike Khan Lab School or Khan Lab School. Do you have anything like in mind, like Khan Lab College maybe, or maybe Khan World College?
So I'll answer the second part. For the simple answer is yes. And I literally just got out of a meeting earlier today where we're looking at some potential university partners where we can offer that. And as we do so, also blur the lines between high school and college. I think every student here is probably capable of getting a substantial chunk of your college degree, if not your entire college degree, potentially while you're in high school or shortly after high school. So expect to hear more about that maybe in a month or two. So I'll say that. And then in terms of college level material, we have some topics that you would consider a freshman or sophomore level, especially in math. We have, as y'all know, calculus, stats, multivariable calculus, differential equations, linear algebra. We only have the videos right now. I hope that will change in the next year or two where we'll have the practice and the mastery learning there. My hope is in the next 2 to 3 years, we can have essentially all of the first 2 years of college on Khan Academy. We have the chemistry, biology, physics. I hope we can go in. We have organic chemistry videos. We do not have the practice, the exercises. So I hope we can do more. And we'll probably do the STEM subjects first, but we'll do others. We're actually very likely to launch we already have, a lot of y'all are familiar with our computer. I see the ONOs and all of that and some of your backgrounds. A lot of y'all are familiar with our core coding platform. We're going to revamp that in the next year. We already have APCS principles on the site. We hope to introduce a true first year computer science type course, hopefully in the next year as well. So all of those things are in the works. And as I mentioned in the last question, I'm hoping that I'm already talking to corporate CEOs and saying, look, if students are already can show competency in their core writing, they can code, maybe they have this skill or that skill, why not give them an apprenticeship out the gate? And then if they do well at that apprenticeship, let's give them a degree. Let's call it the Khan Honors College. And you, the employer, should treat that as good as a traditional 4-year degree. And a lot of the CEOs I talk to are like, yeah, we agree with that. Like most kids with a 4-year degree, we have to retrain them anyway when they come to our corporations. So simple as yes, we are exploring that very aggressively right now. And I'm hoping you'll hear about some of the stuff that blurs the line between high school and college, and maybe even be able to get college at the same time as high school, hopefully in the next 2-3 months. And then I'm hoping in the next year, you'll hear a little bit about this pathways to apprenticeship or ways to get dual enrollment for it. So more coming soon. I wish we could do it faster so we could keep pace with you, but I think you're going to be just fine if you've already gone through most of the Khan Academy content.
Awesome. That's really interesting. I've been looking for opportunities to get ahead in certain aspects of education. So Khan Academy is going to be a great resource as it is currently expanding and continues to expand into those areas. So for the next question, let's see. Aline, do you want to go? Always. Or wait, no. Rachel, you want to
go? How did you get your website to be so well known? You're a nonprofit organization. How did you get all these organizations to invest in you? Or how did you get your website beginning? Did you have developers helping you and publicize it for you, or did people just find it?
It's an interesting question. And I don't know if what my journey is the right journey to index off of, but a lot of y'all probably know how all of this started. If you go way back, if you go to even when I was in college and even in high school, I always kind of dreamt of one day starting a school. As I went through the system, I both enjoyed certain aspects of school, but I also felt like there's got to be better ways to do this. I just thought about how much time felt frankly like busy work, or it was just passive and boring. And if you actually were able to engage and learn, how much more you could do. So I was always in the back of my mind thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. I kept thinking that in college. Most of when I came out of college, I ended up being a math and computer science major. And this was in the late 90s. And, my family, we grew up, I grew up a single mother. She was a cashier at a series of convenience stores growing up. So we didn't have a ton of money. I had a good bit of debt, at least by our standards, when I was graduating from college. And so it was almost like the pragmatism in me did not allow myself to say, hey, Sal, why don't you want to become a teacher or become a professor? And I had a CS degree, late 90s. Hey, people are hiring. So, I go into tech. And even then I said, you know what, I'm going to try to be as successful as I could. I tried to do some startups and things so that one day I could start a school on my own terms. That was almost like my justification for trying to get some resources behind me, pay off my debt, get some savings. When the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, I said, let me go to business school, round out my education a little bit, give myself a little bit of shelter to figure out what I want to do next. Then I ended up working as an analyst at a hedge fund. I'm happy to talk more about what a hedge fund is if y'all are interested. But it was 2004. I was a year out of business school. I was working at the hedge fund for a year. I was in Boston at the time. I had just gotten married, and my cousin came out of the woodwork. My cousin who was visiting me for the wedding, she was 12 years old at the time. Her name was Nadia, or is Nadia. she was having trouble with math. And I was like, oh, well, I can tutor you, Nadia, when you go back to New Orleans. So, and the reason why I said yes is one, I knew how important it was for her to get back on track in math, especially in middle school, because if you don't, the system kind of tracks you in a certain way and you're unlikely to be able to reach your potential then. It was also a fun way for me to connect with a family member 2,000 miles away, 1,500 miles away. And I still had this daydream that one day I could be like a Dumbledore type of figure, start a school on my own terms, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I got started on this journey. And then word spreads in my family, free tutoring's going on. Before I know it, I'm tutoring 10, 15 cousins every day after markets close. I started writing software for them. That was the first Khan Academy. It had nothing to do with videos at the time, but I saw that the reason why they were struggling is they had gaps in their learning. So I wrote a little thing that would automatically generate problems for them and give them practice. I could keep track of what they're doing. 2006, a friend suggests, hey, why don't you make some videos to help scale it? You could use this thing called YouTube. I'm like, oh, I know about that YouTube thing. That's for cats playing piano. That's for dogs on skateboards. That is not for like learning. Got over the idea. It wasn't my idea, and I gave it a shot. And you know, a lot of stories on the internet and on YouTube, people say, oh, so and so went viral, or et cetera, et cetera. That's not what happened to me. I kind of just started making it for my cousins. They famously told me they liked me better on YouTube than in person. It was public. Other people's cousins started using it as well, started giving me positive feedback. And so I just view this, hey, this is a fun hobby for me. I'm making a living working at the hedge fund. I was starting to spend 2-3 hours. My wife was in medical residency, so I had a lot of lonely time. So I had time on my hands to keep working on it. And it kind of grew. It grew quick, slowly, I would say, through word of mouth, people organically finding it on YouTube. And I do have the type of personality that once I get started on something, I tend not to moderate. So I said, hey, I've already done 20 or 30 videos in algebra. Let me do all of algebra. Let me do all of pre-calculus. Let me do all of physics. Let me do all of this. And as I did that, I think the breadth started to draw more and more people into it. By 2000, and hopefully some of the secret sauce that we talked about earlier. By 2007, 2008, I'm like, hey, this could be a real thing. I still wasn't ready to quit my day job, but I set it up as a not-for-profit. I had some pretty grandiose thoughts that, hey, this should be a new organization with a mission to provide a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. So I thought grandiose. This is not just a website. This is not just a YouTube channel. This is not just a piece of software. Back then I did daydream, and I got a lot of science fiction books back here that maybe helped me with that. But like, what if this could be like Harry Seldon's Foundation? What if this could be like the Young Ladies Illustrated Primer in Diamond Age, where this could be like the Oxford or the Harvard, but for the next generation, and it could scale 1,000 times more. Even in 2007, 2008, more people had used Khan Academy than Harvard's whole history. So I was already thinking these, and sorry, the sun is right outside my window. I was already starting to think some of these thoughts. And, I did the most naive thing possible. Even in 2009, there was about 100,000 folks who were using Khan Academy at the time. I quit my day job trying to see if we could find some philanthropic funding. Delusionally thinking, any entrepreneurial thing, you almost have to start delusionally optimistic. You have to say, oh, surely the world will recognize that this is a good idea. It almost never happens that way. and reality kind of hits you hard. And it was hard for me because, I had a good income at the other job. Our first child had just been born. Our income had just got, so there were more mouths to feed, so to speak. And it was really stressful, but I just kind of kept working on it, kind of just a leap of faith. And I was getting some donations here and there, but by the end, by almost 9 months into it, and I was, it's easy for me to talk about now, but it was very stressful at the time. All of a sudden, some people really came out of the woodwork. At the time, folks like Ann and John Doerr, Google, Bill Gates, all of a sudden saying, hey, they were using this stuff, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it felt like it went from zero to something else. And then we also started getting a lot of press. And that, to directly answer your question, is I think what we were already getting on folks' radar, but then that took it to a whole other step function. And ever since then, we've just been trying to back up the vision, offer more and more, and then
MIT
through word of mouth.
26.
So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. We've never had a formal marketing budget or anything like that, and it's been much more of just, let's try to create great things, and if we build it, it will come, and people will notice, and the press will write about it, and so on and so forth. Now we're in a position where people have heard our name. So when I go to a university and I say, hey, let's partner to give college credit to high school students, they at least answer my call. Not everyone wants to do it, but they answer the call. They're willing to entertain the vision. So it's honestly a lot easier today than it was 12 or 13 years ago.
Nice.
Now, thank you so much. That was such a detailed and thoughtful response. Your experiences really demonstrate just success with something like Khan Academy happens because you focus on a passion project for so long. And even if success is difficult to find at first, by this point, it seems fair to state that the success of Khan Academy is overwhelming. Now, we have a lot more questions to get through, and very unfortunately, our time here is limited. So if you don't mind being slightly more concise in your responses, let's move on to Jacob.
That was the most polite way anyone had ever said, Sal, you're taking too long to answer the questions.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm 15 and I'm from Asuncion, Paraguay. And I run an educational nonprofit, and that would give STEAM experiments to students in rural areas. And I want to hear your advice on what you have for other teenagers or high schoolers who are thinking or running a nonprofit themselves.
A couple of quick things. You should have a clear reason of why it is a not-for-profit. A lot of folks went to me like, hey, why isn't Khan Academy a for-profit? I live in the middle of Silicon Valley right now. The whole notion of a not-for-profit. I think the answers are there's certain parts of the world where, or certain parts of our ecosystem where markets are not leading to the outcomes that society needs. I think education and healthcare, there's a lot of this where the buyers, where the people who pay, the people who make the decision, and the beneficiaries are all different people, which doesn't usually work well for markets. And markets might result in outcomes that aren't consistent with our values. I think if someone is bleeding and they're on the doorstep of an emergency room, I think we all agree we should cure them and then worry about whether they have insurance. Similarly, if there's a young person that wants to learn, we should allow them to learn and then worry about what resources they have. So you should have a clear answer to why a not-for-profit, and then have a clear theory of action. I'm a big fan of not-for-profits. I think there's a new generation of not-for-profits that y'all frankly have the skill set, which is very similar to Khan Academy. I also started another not-for-profit, a sister one called Schoolhouse.world, which is around free tutoring. But I'm really interested in this intersection of technology to do scale for social impact. Traditional not-for-profits are, you donate $10, we'll take $1 for overhead, and then we'll use the other $9 to buy mosquito nets or to feed someone or to build a house. That's important. That's good work. I don't want to, but I think there's new not-for-profit models where you could say, you give the $10, we use that to build scalable solutions or platforms that then can reach millions. So, that's my notion. And then, I would say just stick to it, show that you have impact, whether you're doing for-profit or nonprofit. If you get even a small number of people early on who say, wow, what would the world be like if you didn't do this? Like, this changed my life. And then if you could say, well, I changed that, 2 or 3 people, why can't it be 2 or 3 million? Then I think you're onto something.
Wow, that was great. Thank you. That was a really well thought out response. Miguel, sorry.
All good. Thanks, Henry. So I was going to ask Sal, one sec. I'm sorry, I had the question written down, but okay. What spaces in education do you think are ripe for disruption by new technologies?
If you asked me 3 months ago, I would have given a different answer, but I've recently, like literally in the last month or two, I've seen some of what these artificial intelligence technologies are now capable of doing. And I've signed an NDA on a few of them, so I can't talk too much, but I think we are at the cusp of artificial. I used to think we were 5 years away, 10 years away at least. I've seen some of this artificial intelligence technology that can do things that I actually to some degree I thought would never be possible. So I think you're going to be able to do, I think there's always going to be a very powerful, the human components are going to be very important, but the notion, let's say you're a tutor. What if the artificial intelligence can monitor the tutoring session and give you coaching while you're tutoring? Like, hey, make sure you call on this person. Here's an example problem to use. Hey, ask more questions. give shorter answers, whatever it might be. I think that's going to happen in the next year or two. So I think that's interesting. I think this notion of being able to have real Socratic dialogue with technology we're on the cusp of that. So those are the ones that I think are really interesting from a technological point of view. People often ask about virtual reality. I think we're further there. I think when it becomes better, it will be good for some forms of experiential learning, visit ancient Rome, go through a game or a simulation together. But if I were a betting man, I would say that in the next year or two, some of the artificial intelligence type things, and even for things, like mastery-based, competency-based learning, Khan Academy can assess certain
Recording
things.
stopped.
Khan Academy can assess certain things really well, like a multiple choice question. But right now, we can't assess your subjective free response to something. I think that's going to change in the next couple of years. So I don't know if you want to call that disruption or innovation, but that's what's in our cards, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, Sal.
Yes, thank you so much for that response. We now move on to Robbie, who has been very patiently waiting to ask his question. He's an MIT student. So let me check a word with you.
Hi, Sal. It's nice to talk to you. So just like Jakob, I also have a nonprofit, and we teach coding to underprivileged youth worldwide. And as our nonprofit has been scaling to Ukraine and Kenya, where I was actually in person this summer, we've been trying to figure out how we can reach more and more students, and do so effectively with good teaching that people enjoy. And the hardest thing has been finding really good teachers, like standout teachers that can really touch a kid and change his life, or his or her life. And I just wonder what you might think makes a good teacher, and if you have any thoughts about the various qualities that a good teacher and I guess educator might share.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't claim I have the full answer here, but the teachers that I've always resonated with are the ones that are not there to kind of enforce a power dynamic. They're not there to show them as to be the source of all knowledge. They're there truly to be a mentor and a guide. They feel very secure in what they know and what they don't know. When they don't know something, I think the most powerful thing a teacher can do is to tell you, you know what, I'm also confused by that. Let's work on that notion together. I think a teacher who's listening, truly listening, and trying to understand and empathize students, who's asking more questions than answering questions. A student who, and this is even when I make a video, I'm imagining the learner on the other side, and I don't imagine a learner that I need to talk down to or I need to talk up to or whatever. I imagine an equal who just, for whatever reason, doesn't understand this material yet. And I think when you have that type of tone matters a lot. It puts people at ease. Learning something is very stressful, and your self-esteem is on the line and all of this. So it's all about how can you make people comfortable? And of course, really mastering the subject matter is really important. We have this platform, schoolhouse.world, and there might be ways to work together with all of y'all or some of these not-for-profits you're doing. But the thesis here is that we could do scalable tutoring by leveraging volunteership, and we're doing it over Zoom. But we have a whole system where students first have to show that they've mastered the material. They do that by going to Khan Academy. It records their face and screen. They have to explain their reasoning. It gets peer reviewed. But then once they start tutoring after that, their tutoring sessions get reviewed by other tutors. They get feedback. And then the feedback is, you need to ask more questions. You need to do this, you need to do that. And then that helps refine people to get there. But we're still working on it too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Let's see. Ian, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ian. I'm from Irvine, California, and I wanted to ask you, Sal, what do you think the role technology plays in education is, and how do you think devices are being utilized in classrooms right now?
Yeah, good question. I think it's what's the interesting thing about technology is people tend to have one of two mindsets about technology. Sometimes people say, let me put some cool technology together, and then let me see where this might be useful. So it's kind of like you have the solution first, and then you look for the problem to solve with the solution. Or there's the other way around, which is like, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What is the solution that you think will work? And then use technology and potentially use the simplest technology that it's available to you. So in education, I tend to lean on the latter model. So for me, it's not about technology. And look, technology can be anything from machine learning all the way to a pencil is officially technology. Electricity is technology. Um, an inclined plane is arguably technology. A wheel is technology. But so for me, the interesting possibilities in education are, how do you allow for more personalization so that instead of the student having to adapt to the system adapts to where the student is? If you 2,300 years ago, very few people got an education, and I picked that time in particular, but the few people who did had a very good education. If you were Alexander the Great 2,300 years ago, your tutor was Aristotle, whose tutor was Plato, whose tutor was Socrates. So it's a very good academic lineage. And your tutor would adapt. If young Alexander did not understand military strategy, Aristotle would probably slow down. It's like, you're going to be emperor of Macedonia soon. Like, you have to know this material. When we did mass public education 200-300 years ago, we had to compromise. We couldn't give everyone a personal tutor. So you batched everyone together in these groups of 25, 30, 35 students, move them at the set pace, apply some processes to them. Some kids are able to keep up. Other kids start developing gaps. It's okay. We'll funnel them into different parts of the labor pyramid. We don't have to make that compromise anymore. And frankly, we can't, because automation, AI are going to disrupt big parts of the labor pyramid. We need more people in the knowledge economy. So for me, it's all about how can we start to scalably and economically give that personalization to folks everywhere. So that personalization, the mastery learning, competency learning, it shouldn't matter how long you sit in a chair. It should matter whether you know the material or not. So those are my pedagogical goals. And then what technologies are there to get us there? That's generally how I think about it. Some of the AI stuff that I talked about, it is intriguing because I'm like, that is a solution without the problem yet. But when you see the solution, okay, that can help us with some aspects of this personalization and mastery learning. But that tends to be my lens. Don't do technology for technology's sake. Try to solve the problem. Figure out the problem first.
Thank you for the response. So I think it's worth reminding people that we are quite a ways through the AMA. It's already 4:30 p.m. over here, but we shall move on. So, sorry, I feel that I don't have great luck when it comes to pronouncing names correctly, but Priyank?
Hi, thank you. Hi, Sal. My name is Priyank Srinivasan, and I'm from Simi Valley, California. And my question is, when did your passion for computer science arise, and what opened the doors to computer science?
For me, it was, I started in a very low-tech way. I got a TI-85 calculator. I think I got a TI-81 or two. I don't know. It was at my high school. It was probably my freshman year of high school. And that was actually how I discovered programming. I remember the user manual, and I remember that first night I kind of pulled an all-nighter writing like a little video game on my calculator. And, I think everyone here had that moment in their life where like, wait, you could make a computer do any of these things? Like, that's mind-boggling. And you just get addicted to it. And so that was my very first experience. And so I used to be like a hardcore programmer on a TI-81, a TI-82, and eventually a TI-85. And then I was taking some dual enrollment classes my junior year at the University of New Orleans. And there was a professor there who was my professor in one of the math classes. His name was Dr. Jairo Santania. And when he found out that I really liked programming, but I didn't have access to a computer. I didn't have a computer at home. He got me he had extra grant money. He got me an internship where I had access to the computer lab at the university. And so that was the first time that I was able to program properly. So I was able to leverage those computers at the computer lab. I'm talking, this is like 1992, 1993. That's the first time I had glimpses of email, glimpses of the internet. The first time, I was programming in C and then C++. So that was my first intro. And then I only got more and more addicted to it. And so that's what, I remember when I was leaving high school, I thought I wanted to be a theoretical physicist because I'm like, well, what's more profound than trying to understand the nature of reality? And I was like, well, what might be even more profound than that is to create realities. And so that's why I wanted to go into computer science and why I ended up becoming a computer science major when I went to college.
All right, thank you so much.
That's fascinating. Thank you. Mohammed Rahim, you want to go next?
Hello, my name is Mohammed. I had a question. What is the biggest flaw that you think are in online education, and what are benefits of it? And also, what's the difference, that the main difference you see in face-to-face interaction education versus the online that we can do on Khan Academy?
Yeah. So I'll say a couple of things. These days, a lot of press asks me like, hey, we just had online education during the pandemic and it seemed to really not be good for a lot of people. And you're talking about online. And I always try to differentiate between distance learning and online education or using online tools. And either of them can be done better or either of them can be done worse. So for example, a distance learning that many school districts had to do a little bit, and I don't blame them. They had to plan super fast, but just transplanting your traditional, somewhat passive classroom that's moving at a fixed pace and then transplanting that into Zoom, where you're sitting at a screen staring at it for 4 or 5 hours is not going to be good. And so it was not surprising that a lot of people disengaged. Now at Khan World School, we don't make people sit on, it is a virtual high school, but we don't make people sit on Zoom for 5 hours. Every day, there's about an hour of a session like this with maybe 12 to 15 students where they're engaged in a deep conversation. So once again, when you get humans together, either in a room or in a Zoom, they should be interacting with each other, talking to each other. It should not be a passive, one-to-many type of thing. And then all the rest of the time, there could still be community, but it needs to be a little bit more, it can be more asynchronous, more flexible. So I believe that whether you're doing an online system or an in-person system, the online tools like Khan Academy can be used in either setting. Now, there is a benefit to them that they're not bound by time or space. You could live in rural Alaska and leverage these things. You could be a truck driver learning on the side, someone in the military. Nothing is stopping you from using these resources on your phone. But the best use case of it, in my mind, is you are doing it in an in-person setting and students are working on it. But it's not just like, this Vulcan or this Borg reality where everyone's just sitting on a computer and just, by themselves. The ideal is you're working on it, you're progressing, but if your peer needs help, you help them, you can give them tips. Teachers or students can lead breakout sessions. We're like, okay, we're learning a ton of stuff on Khan Academy. Now let's see if we can apply it on a deeper thing, or maybe we can do a project, or maybe we can do a Socratic dialogue. And I think if you have that really active, human, personalized type of learning going on, whether it's online or in person, or whether it's distance or in person, then I think you're getting the most out of both the technology and the people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Sunny, if you'd like to propose your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Sal. I'm Sunny. I'm 17 years old. I'm currently in the Bay. You and Grant Sanderson are honestly two of my greatest inspirations, and I've actually made a couple of educational videos inspired by you and Grant and using his Python library, Manum. So I was just wondering, would you like to share your story with Grant and maybe share any comments on that you have on his story?
Yeah, and my story with Grant goes further back than you might realize. So one of my best friends in high school, a gentleman of the name Matt Nagel, Matt ended up becoming a high school English teacher, and he ended up being the coach or the sponsor of and he's a high school English teacher in Park City, Utah, and he teaches at the high school there, and he ended up also becoming the sponsor of the debate team. And he used to start, there's a couple of debate competitions at Stanford, and he would drive with his kids in a minivan and bring them here. So I started seeing Matt around 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. He used to drive, and we used to, talk about old times, etc. And he would come with all of his high school students, and I would hang out with them a little bit, maybe have a meal with them and stuff like that. And that was the first time I met Grant, when he was in high school, when he was y'all's age. And And Matt, you say, this kid, he reminds me a lot of you. I mean, Sal, you got into a little bit more trouble than Grant did. You're a little bit more of a troublemaker, but he really likes to geek out on the math. And I didn't index on Grant that much. Then Grant goes to Stanford. After he graduates from Stanford, he applies for a job at Khan Academy. We hire him on our content team. And as you know, a lot of the upper level math courses, Grant also makes videos alongside me. And honestly, Grant is someone, when he was at Khan Academy, I'm like, oh, I have found a successor or one of many success who can, I hope Khan Academy lasts well beyond myself. But obviously he had also was starting to develop 3 Blue 1 Brown, and he kind of went off on his own. And I think it's great. Like he is exactly everything, we just described about what he does. His videos a little bit different style, but he does still focus on getting at the core of the intuition. And he tackles really advanced topics that have historically been very hard for people to get their head around. And he does it in a very elegant and visually beautiful way. So yeah, I'm also a mutual fan of Grant, and proud to whatever role I might have played in his early years.
That is so fascinating. I didn't know your story went back that far. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's amazing. Grant's work, especially the work on Khan Academy, has been hugely inspiring to me. It's inspired a lot of my personal coding projects. So it's amazing that you have that many connections with them. All right, Reese Armstrong, you want to go next? I think you're muted.
Whoops. Yeah, my system was muted. Hi, Sal. I'm Reese from Austin, and I'm wondering if you see traditional high schools transitioning to mastery learning, and how will that transition play out?
Yeah, that's my hope and dream. And a lot of what we think about, and it goes back to that earlier question where we talked about, cross-disciplinary learning. This is another thing. We know that traditional high schools aren't there. I can preach mastery learning until the cows come home, but it is kind of a psychological shift for folks. So a lot of what we think about at Khan Academy is, how do we meet teachers and classrooms where they are? And where they are is what I would call synchronous. Let's just assign this standard for everyone to do tonight, etc. But then they fall into more of a mastery learning. And so that's what we're trying to make the Khan Academy exercises and product do more and more and more of that. I think the stuff that's going to get us even further along that route is when you can finally start to get credit for your work on Khan Academy. So we have a pilot right now with Howard University. We have a college algebra class. We're running it in Title I high schools. Kids get mastery on the course. They get transferable college credit from Howard University. Now, all of a sudden, Khan Academy isn't just something on the side to help you with. It becomes the curriculum. It becomes the assessment. So I think the more that we can do that over the years to come, the more that it will just naturally motivate teachers and school districts to think a little bit more in terms of mastery and competency. All mastery learning is that you always have the opportunity and the incentive to fill in any gaps you have so that you can truly get to a level of mastery. Instead of holding fixed when and how long you work on something with a variable outcome, what you hold fixed is that you need to learn the material. What's variable is when and how long you have. And then, of course, what matters is not how long you sat in a chair, but whether or not you know the material, which sometimes people will call competency learning. So fingers crossed, we're working on it slowly but surely.
Thank you for that response, Sal.
Yes, thank you. So sorry if I pronounced your name, if I mispronounced your name as well, but Sihidi, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah. Hi, Sal. I'm Sahidi, and I'm from Atlanta. And I really love you. And my mom would haunt me if I did not mention this, but she's your biggest fan, so she says hi. But as a business owner, especially of a nonprofit, what are core ethical values that you hold for yourself and throughout your business, but also in real life? And also a fun one, because I see these books behind you. What's your favorite book quote?
Favorite book quote? Well, first of all, I'm not the owner of Khan Academy. You own as much of Khan Academy as I do. Not-for-profit by definition has no owner. And that was, I wanted Khan Academy to be a not-for-profit because my old job, I saw that who owns an organization clearly can drive what it becomes. And sometimes if you take a lot of outside investment, it can make you, even if the founder wants the organization to be about something, it can skew them one direction or another. But with a not-for-profit, the bottom line is its mission, right? It's not a double bottom line. It's not profit and the mission, et cetera. It's the mission. Now, I will say very openly, one of the reasons why the name Khan Academy has the word Khan in it, I was like, well, I don't own this thing. How do I make it hard for them to fire me? Well, that makes it harder. They still could, but it's a little more awkward now. But so that's, in terms of values, I think it's easier to stick to it as a not-for-profit because your mission is your bottom line. Like, my board does not push me to say, hey, Sal, you got to improve your earnings per share by next quarter, because we have no earnings per share. They say, Sal, okay, that's great. You have impact. It's great. We got this efficacy, but let's make sure we're reaching the kids who need it most. Like, my board pushes me exactly on the places where they should push me. One thing that I try to do, I think it's the Zoroastrians who have the quote, good thoughts lead to good words, lead to good actions. I'll admit I don't always have perfect thoughts or perfect words, but I do try to strive to that. And one test, there's sometimes the New York Times headline test, where if you just say, what if everything you were doing was made public on the New York Times, would you be able to defend it? And I always try to remind myself that whenever I'm tempted or face a decision of like, will it pass that? And, is this thought I'm having a thought that I would be proud of if the whole world knew that I had this thought? And then the words I'm saying. So, and I find that the more you do that, the more you do the right thing, I guess.
Thank you, Sal. That's really admirable.
Thank you. All right. Kai, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I've just got one fun question with you, because I've been debating this with my friend for so long now. But is a hot dog a sandwich?
Hot dog or sandwich is the question?
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Mhm.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm inclined to agree. Yeah, so we only have a little bit of open questioning left, but David, would you like to go?
I like it. It's also a taco, and it is a taco sandwich.
I remember, so I'm David. I remember like being in grade 4. I'm in like grade 12 now, and well, I'm out of high school now, but I remember being in grade 4 and like using it and playing your videos in the background so I get more energy points. But a bit of a lighter question is to flip the table a little bit. What's something you've been learning and maybe that you've been needing help with recently?
I mean, I'm learning by doing, being a parent. I don't claim that I have figured that out by any stretch of the imagination. My son's sitting right here, so he can see whether I'm achieving competency there. I've been my guitar playing has plateaued when I was about y'all's age, when I was about 14 years old, and I keep telling myself I want to get better. So I have these little spurts where I try to start learning online and I get distracted again. So that's another thing. I think recently, my knowledge of machine learning and artificial intelligence is about 20 years old from when I was doing my undergrad and my grad school. So because of some of the advances I've been seeing lately, I've definitely wanted to start going deep again and getting completely up to speed on what the state of the art is. So yeah, those are probably the big ones.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we've got a few minutes left. So let's just I'm going to continue to like go through as many questions as I can. Chiru, you want to go? I think you're muted.
Hi, I'm Chiru. I'm from Vermont, and my question is kind of off topic, but what brand of toothpaste do you use?
I believe it's Sensodyne, but my wife picked it. It wasn't like a conscious decision on my part. But I think I do have sensitive teeth if I didn't use Sensodyne.
Personally, I like Sensodyne. Has anybody tried this black charcoal toothpaste?
Oh, I use that too. I have guess it's like this.
It works.
Yeah,
it worked for me. Like my teeth are whiter.
Yeah, and it's like salt. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. What's it called? It's called like Akamai or something. But which is a whole other separate thing. That's obviously a server hosting something or another. But yes, I've used that one as well. But right now I'm using Sensodyne.
Yeah, mine is called Hello Activated Black Charcoal Toothpaste.
Oh, that's a different one.
Okay, Ishan, if you'd like to ask your question.
Hello, I'm Eshan from Seattle, and I want to know your opinion on how math classes teach proofs. So, like, I feel like proofs are a really important part of really intuitively understanding math. And like when I learned the quadratic formula, I don't think I was shown the proof for it. And like, for example, now in my calculus class, like y e to the x is its own derivative, right? Like, what do you think of how that could be better?
Yeah, I have two minds here. I definitely think you should offer, and we try as much as possible in Khan Academy to offer the proof, like for, it's just completing the square, gives you the quadratic formula. And well, anyway, I won't prove everything to you right now, but like, I think it's incredibly valuable. I do think for most students, learning it can be stressful. So if they learn kind of the idea and how to apply it first, and then it frees them up to say, hey, what is the proof here? So I think generally I'm a fan of proofs. I was definitely the kid that always wanted the proof to feel satisfied with things. But I do think sometimes in, like, say, a calculus class, I think it's a little silly that in the first 2 weeks of a calculus class, they introduce epsilon delta, which is a fairly rigorous way of defining limits. And that's really more appropriate for like a real analysis type of course. So sometimes they overdo it, but I'm a big fan of offering it where possible. I think, most of the things in calculus, people should at least go through the exercise of seeing why that is true. Why is the power rule true? Why is derivative of e to the x, e to the x? So yeah.
That's great. Let's see. Khan Academy's emphasis on proofs has been great for me because I'm someone who like really wants to know the why of a lot of the math, and that's pretty overlooked. So I really appreciate that part of it. Arav, you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Arav. I'm from Toronto, and I wanted to ask you a little bit of a casual question, but you have a lot of books in your background, and that really gets my attention because I love to read books. And I wanted to ask you, what book really changed your life, and like a piece of nonfiction book that you really like?
Oh, not a nonfiction book. I mean, I can tell you some science fiction books I love, and I could take up all of the time doing this one. I mean, I love the Foundation. Well, it was science fiction Foundation series I love. I still fantasize that Khan Academy is kind of like the Foundation. Hopefully we don't enter into a dark ages, but Khan Academy could be part of the help of keeping us from entering into dark ages. So that's one. But it's not just science fiction. I'm a big Jane Austen fan. I love Pride and Prejudice. That's still in the fiction genre. I love almost all of Mark Twain, Arthur C. Clarke. Nonfiction books, I would say some of the strain of ancient, or I would say Hindu philosophy that's kind of focused on the philosophical, spiritual, sometimes is known as Vedanta. So, the great Vedanta texts are like the Upanishads, which I have a copy here someplace. So the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, I think, are very interesting, very modern in a lot of ways, right? People debate now, do we live in a simulation? Is reality in some ways defined by perception versus the other way around? There were philosophers in India meditating under trees 4,000 years ago who are thinking about these exact same questions. And when you read some of these, and it's actually eerily similar to also with some of the writings by the Stoic philosophers. So I also like Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Art of Living. Very similar. Just do the next right thing, accept where the world is. Do not try to change things that you cannot try to change, but then just try to do the next right thing. And also the value of meditation, which is something that I've started to take very seriously over the last 4 or 5 years.
Thank you for your answer. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of people lose sight of how far basic philosophical ideas and proposals have gotten us in becoming as knowledgeable as we are now as a species. So we have a lot of remaining questions, but we're really coming up to the end of our time here. Sal, if you would be so generous, if we got all these remaining questions together, like, could we email them to you, or is like there any way that you'd be interested, that you'd be willing and able to respond to them?
Yeah. I don't have a super hard stop right now. If y'all are willing to go for another 5-10 minutes, if people want to put the questions on the chat, I can just go through them as fast as I can. Want me to do that?
Sure. We might still have like a few remaining questions. Like, would email be a good way to contact you for like
Yes,
those
yes,
who?
yes.
Oh,
Email is
great.
great.
Okay. So I guess rapid fire away.
Okay, what is morning routine? I do take my morning routine very seriously. Wake up. I take making my bed very seriously. I try to help the kids get breakfast together and get their snacks together, along with my wife. My mother-in-law lives with us as well. Then I take a cold shower. I found that to be transformational. I usually try to do some form of exercise in the morning, push-ups or pull-ups or something like that. And I actually don't eat breakfast. You could look at, you're all growing young people, so don't necessarily do what I do, but like, it tends to work for me. And then I do try to knock out some to-dos early in the morning. For me, it's all about building momentum. If I can build momentum, I start to feel good. And I like to have chunks of my day where I have creative time. No matter how much I get bogged down in meetings and things, I get to do that. So that's morning routine. Let's see, morning routine, Seattle regions. We have a bit of a weird question for you on our Slack. And among them are a few pog face emojis. It's basically, so I would like you to invite you to join them. Would you be willing to do that? I don't fully understand the question, maybe because I read it too fast, but it sounds like there's some kind of emoji. Yes, maybe I'm open to it.
Yeah, I can explain.
I have to go like this?
Yeah, like
that's what my son just said. You have to go like this. I don't know what we're doing. It's just like
surprise.
Yeah, like almost a Winston sort of face.
Yeah. Oh, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Okay. Did I just do it? Did I just check that box?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm confused. All right. And let's see. A majority of Khan Academy videos are composed of you lecturing about a topic from a series, telling an audience that exists but is not present. Does that throw you off when you're recording them? How are you able to plan out these lectures in a seamless and straightforward way? In the early days, I mean, it was just all me, and going to the earlier question of, I think, what makes a great teacher a good teacher, and I'm sure I have a lot of stuff that I can work on, is to be able to model what's going on in the student's mind reasonably well. So, when I'm talking, I do try to imagine what the other person is feeling or listening. And so, yeah, I kind of, I let myself be liberated, right? I'm willing to laugh. I actually force myself to smile, even if I've had a bad day, before I make a video, because I generally think people can sense that tone, even though they're not seeing my face. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I truly say, like, I care about, because I do care about, right? Like, there's a quote I first wrote, the best way of sounding and looking like you care about people is to care about people. And so tell yourself, I'm caring about people, and then it will come off that way because it's genuine. So, and I got to tell you, there's so many very capable people that if I asked them over coffee, like, hey, tell me about your work, they're really engaging in this, that. But as soon as you put a camera or you say record a video, they freeze up and they want to be perfect and they sound like a robot. And I'm like, no, just let yourself go, be easy with yourself, and it comes out so much better. But it is a little bit of you have to have a little bit of a leap of faith to do that. Let's see, what was the most important thing that helped you scale Khan Academy to this stage of founding? It's the right people showing up at the right time. I definitely was able to come to the table with certain skills that I had built over time. And it wasn't just, and some of it was, I wasn't afraid to build an interactive website. I wasn't intimidated by technology. I was like, okay, there's this YouTube thing. I can put some existing technology together and make videos. So that was part of it. But obviously YouTube had to exist. The internet had to exist. Otherwise, Khan Academy would have been a much harder proposition. And then, honestly, putting the right energy out into the universe. And I do think the right energy comes to you. And, it doesn't happen always on the timeline that you're hoping, but the right people came at the right time and continue to do so to push our, I have a theory that benevolent aliens are helping Khan Academy prepare humanity for first contact. So, there's many people I could list as either potential benevolent aliens or at least somehow influenced by the benevolent aliens. Let's see. B wants to ask, let me go to the other questions before how do you find confidence to talk to millions of people every day? Yeah, I think you got to realize whether you're talking to one person or a million people, we're all human beings. And we all just want to connect to each other as human beings. And so I remind myself that, there are, every now and then I meet someone who was a childhood hero who I'm a little bit intimidated by. And I said, no, they're just a human being. And let me just be myself, and the chips fall where they do. And one other hack I'll tell you is, if you just assume people want to be your friend and you want to be their friend and you have positive intent and you act that way, it usually is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So whether you're doing that with one person or a million people, like I will talk to, let's see, there's 89 of y'all, whether it's 89 of y'all or 89 million or just 8 of y'all, I will talk in the exact same way, and my mind does nothing different. And so I believe in that. It's useful. Let's see. Boy, so many questions. How to be more productive, be a mercenary with your time in a good way. And when I say be a mercenary time, I don't think that means work all the time. I think that means be very judicious about why you're spending time on what you're doing. So I remember in business school, for example, a lot of people like to socialize in business school. I like certain types of socialization. I like going to dinners and having conversations with small groups. That's my idea of a good time. I don't like cocktail parties. I don't like loud bars. I don't like things like that. But I remember I was running for class president in business school. I'm like, but I got to go to these things. I have to show my face. So I would literally do that. I would walk through the door. I would make sure that I would say hi to everyone and I would leave. I was in and out in 15 minutes. And then I would go have a dinner with 6 friends and have a nice conversation, or go home and read a good book and recharge. So being productive for me isn't just always working. It's when you're working, be hey, am I using my time in the best way? But also, hey, let me make sure I'm recharging, and let me make sure that I'm not just spinning wheels in ways that'll deplete myself or other people. Let's see. What do you think is the biggest part of the school system? I could go, are we teaching the right subjects? Seat time. We've talked about this a little bit. There's a book, The One World Schoolhouse, I wrote 10 years ago. If you have the time, take a look at it. The future of software development in Silicon Valley, big question. My answer is different now than it would have been 3 months ago. Some of the artificial intelligence is getting awfully good at pieces of the coding process. So I don't know where it's going to evolve, but I think it's going to involve artificial intelligence in somewhat surprising ways. But I think the skills that y'all are developing at Coders, the real thing is, how do you break up a problem? How do you know what is capable or what is not capable? And then also, how do you build it out in scalable ways? So I think the architecture part of coding is always going to be key. So, I don't think that's going to be disrupted, so to speak. Boy, there's so many questions. So let me just take, let's just take 3 more in person, and then I think we can wrap it up for the day. I'll let y'all call on them. Whoever you think should call on.
Actually, okay. I think that now might be a good time to move on to a very special question from the head of Hack Club. So, Zach? Zach, are you?
I think.
So sorry. So first, Sal, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us for this past hour. Really, this has been a very moving conversation, and it's so inspiring, both who you are, the values in which you live your life, and also what you've built with your time. So this is a bit of a long question, but it's a tradition that we ask to a lot of guests who come to us. By the way, just personally, I have to say, I love that you mentioned The Diamond Age earlier. That is my favorite book of all time. And oh my God, if a Young Ladies Illustrated primer actually existed and was available to every young person on this planet, what a world would that be, right? So with that, let's say when you joined this Zoom meeting, you get on your computer, you get in front, you get kind of make sure lighting's okay, and you click that join button. Suddenly you don't know how it happened, but somehow you find yourself teleported back to the year 500 BC. And you have no idea how you got there. You have no idea how this happened, but you're looking around and it's like, yep, clearly 500 BC. And you also realize that everyone is treating you like you're the dictator of the world. And, along this, already series of realizations you're having, you also realize that you are on one of three identical Earths. And in the year 2022, in 2,522 years from now, there's going to be a great war between these three Earths, and only one Earth is going to survive. The question is, what do you do as dictator of the world in 500 BC to best set up your Earth for survival? And there's three constraints. Am I with you so far?
Yeah, I'm going to 500 BC, and I'm on one of these three Earths.
Yeah,
there's two others, and in 3,000 years, there's going to be a fight between these three.
Yeah, you know for sure it's going to happen in the year 2022.
Okay, 2,500 years or something. Okay.
Exactly. And the three constraints are one, so you're teleported back. You can start anywhere you want. You can assume you speak the local language. You can assume that these other three Earths are like three atom by atom exact identical copies before you were teleported back. And you're not going to like die from some horrible disease or something like that. The second constraint is that you are going to die. So you don't actually have 2,500 years to like do work. You only have the rest of your lifetime to set your plans in motion, but you have the power, right? I mean, like people listen to you, you have resources. You can assume you have all the resources of the area you live in at the time. The final constraint is that it is the year 500 BC. You're restricted accordingly. So even though you're dictator of the world in 500 BC, who knows if you say something, if people on the other side of the planet will hear it before the end of your life. Also, the war is inevitable. You can't move people between them. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't have any context. Three Earths go in a black box. Only one comes out. Diplomacy is not an option. All of that. So that's the question. Any clarifying questions before you go for it?
No, I think I got the gist of it.
It's kind of a foundation question. Yeah.
Well, at a very high level, I would probably borrow a little bit out of Harry Seldon's playbook, and I would. For those of you who haven't read the Foundation series, I recommend reading it. I'm referring to it right now. I would set up not just one or potentially two foundations. I would set up as many potential foundations around the world as possible. So what I would probably start doing is just trying to spew as much knowledge as I can remember. So in 500 BCE, that's a couple of, probably 100, 200 years after Pythagoras. That predates Euclid by about 200-300 years. So that gives you kind of the sense of the state of the art, at least as far as we know back then. Really most of algebra comes from Al-Khwarizmi, which was more in the 12th or 13th century in Baghdad. So, me being who I am, I can get us to, I could just spew all the way to easily calculus, statistics, multivariable differential equations, all of Newtonian physics, a reasonable chunk of at least the big ideas of modern physics, of just the notions of gravity, of space-time. I would just start spewing that. I would make a lot of prognostications about potential future states of what might happen. I would start spewing the periodic table of elements. I think, the nature of electricity. I would be careful about gunpowder, because that could lead, it's kind of like nuclear weapons, that it could lead easily to a dark ages if you're not careful or the right people don't have it. But I would spew these things, and I would try to find essentially proselytizers, people who can spread these and almost treat it like a religion, and take this and bring it and then start foundation. So it's, you have a fault tolerant system, so that, within by the time that I die, there could be 30 or 40 of these foundations around the world that are then taking that knowledge and then running with it. But I would make these foundations. There's another related book here, the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain. And this is where an industrial age engineer goes back to King Arthur's Court. Very similar idea. And then, everyone's so backward, and he uses education to teach a new generation. He knows about electricity and this and that, and he's able to use those to fend off the armies of the Middle Ages. So I would make sure that these foundations are not just about knowledge, they're also using this knowledge to protect themselves, so that the people with the knowledge are the ones that are also able to keep territory and then also potentially expand territory and govern. And yeah, I think that would give us a pretty good fighting shot of having a pretty good system long term.
Amazing. Have you read the book Anathem before?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
I would
yeah.
have that too, where you'd have like different sects that have different time horizons. And there's one, that think about. So yeah, that was another one I would definitely borrow from.
Amazing. Well, just thank you so much for joining us. And Damien and Henry, thank you so much for hosting. You both were just so fantastic. We have a tradition at Hack Club where when we say goodbye, where we end every meeting by everyone puts their hands in and we count 3, 2, 1, and then we all shout hack. So if everyone wants to unmute and turn your videos on, and then Sal, if you could lead us in the countdown, that'd be wonderful.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Can we give Sal and
Thank you so
Damien and Henry a round of applause? I mean, this is.
Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Sal.
Thank you so much, Sal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sal.
Left us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming. Ramiz, thank you again for securing this AMA. Zach, Christina, for everything Hack Club.
Well, and thank you for hosting, Damien and Henry, you two, and
Thank
for
you.
everyone who came. Thank you for being here. I got some Slack messages from some folks who woke up at 3 a.m. so they could be in this call, and really, all of you are the reason why we're all able to be together here. And just thank you. I feel so lucky to be able to spend an hour with everyone here.
Congratulations to the people who managed to stay up for this.
Yes. I think we can keep the Zoom room open if people want.